Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this weekend's edition of Bookbytes. It's a beautiful summer's evening. I'm broadcasting out of Johannesburg with a very exciting new collection by a media personality and somebody who's been in this space in so many creative ways, in the creative space from Durban. Sana Ibrahim has written or compiled her Lockdown Liftoff, a compilation of reflective writing, poetry, and how it all began. She says, inspired by Kitty O'Meara's prose poem, and the people stayed home. Durban based creative entrepreneur Sana-Bella Ebrahim began penning lockdown poems in April 2020. She shares her poems with family and friends via WhatsApp, email, and social media. Some of her poems were published in Seychelles Nation in a letter to the editor in Today in Seychelles. Guided by an intention to provide a sort of lockdown lift, her poems draw inspiration from significant days such as International Artist Day, Earth Day, and World Book and Copyright Day. Readers have described her poetry as inspiring, uplifting, so sincere and emotive, a delight to read, so apt in this lockdown. Exploring prose and poetic genres, the author is convinced that creativity is the new age currency to propel narrative futures and artistic pursuits. Her calligraphy and sign language workshops serve as a springboard for reflection and innovation, and it shows in this little collection as she is the creative brain behind Art Scribes Global, which is part of the publication fuel behind Lockdown Liftoff. Mask in Mayhem, Mirth, and Misery. Sanabel is also the research studies lecturer at the AFTER School of Film based in Durban. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Bookbytes, Sana. It's so wonderful to have you here and Mubarak on your new collection. It's really great to have had the opportunity to read it. Welcome to Bookbytes.
Walaikum salam, Shafinaaz. Jazakallah for having me on the show, and thanks for the good wishes.
And what does it feel like to finally have this? I know you have like such a great creative spirit, and you're always writing and you're always sharing, as you said. I'm also very pleased and proud to see some of the behind the scenes work. But what does it feel to have this actual collection in your hands finally?
Yes, it's been amazing. As you know, I've always wanted to be an author, so this materialized, and I'm so grateful. It was actually in December last year that I sat down and put it together. I started writing the poems during the lockdown, and I was in a very dark place last year in December, and the writing was very cathartic to get me out of that situation.
I have found, through the interviews that lockdown provided an opportunity for a lot of reflective writing. We saw a lot of memoir coming out of it. So while lockdown liftoff is not memoir as such, I see the reflections, I see the sort of catharsis, but at the same time, very uplifting. You've got uplifting, theories around, like I enjoyed in part one, you call the Ubuntu connection, and you speak about this experience you have on an overseas flight, when you saw what happens to this fellow passenger. Speak to us about like some of your reflections and what enticed you to write beyond the catharsis, your connection with people that allows you to reflect and write at the same time.
Yes, I draw on my experiences, and as you mentioned, Ubuntu connection. There was a fellow passenger. She was about 20 years old, and she had the look of terror on her face as it was her first flight. And I speak about the flight attendant being so comforting towards her and checking on her at odd intervals and making her feel at ease, and the sense of going beyond the call of duty and assisting a fellow person, and that speaks to your humanity as well. And I think my calligraphy workshops, as well as the sign language workshops, provided the impetus for much of the writing. Much of the themes are drawn around my experiences with the calligraphy workshops. In part two, I talk about a second chance, and I speak about my grade 7 educator who came back into my life about 20 years later, and she shared with me that uh, we have a choice in life and we shouldn't allow anyone to make that choice for us. So every time I have a calligraphy workshop, I give the participants a choice between the 2.0 millimeter nib or the 3.0 millimeter nib. And that's a way of exercising choice and making decisions in life.
I think even that sort of agency that we have is part of the creative process, right? Are we compelled to create, or is there just really a very organic process? And compulsion can be organic as well. We can ask so many of those questions of ourselves because each of your experiences draws on a very different energy to write and to create. Speak to us about your connection between your writing and calligraphy as an art.
Okay, so calligraphy is a very ancient art form, and it also is an art form that can be read. And I found it very, I call it meditative arts in my posters because something I read on Facebook says that when you meditate, you usually don't do anything, but with meditative arts, you're actually creating something in the process. So the writing and the calligraphy goes hand in hand. And I also had some participants tell me that they write themselves an inspirational quote every morning in calligraphy since they've done my course. So it's been very inspirational and very uplifting in that regard.
So you're saying they write something using the calligraphy. They write something inspirational using the calligraphy.
Yes,
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I mean, it speaks of the energy that comes through the calligraphic writing, like you say, a meditative art. So I find it fascinating because I also see it in the design of the book. So from coming from the publishing perspective, I don't know if it can be seen, but I like that your designer, the designer that you would have worked on, has chosen very specific fonts that shine, like you're saying, sign and shine on in this part one. And I see some of it coming through just in print form in your book. So I think it's wonderful that you've been able to do that as well.
yes. So the calligraphy in my book is actually my handwriting. You can see that um, it's my handwriting that's been scanned in calligraphy, and I'm very grateful to Hiren Ranchod of Blue Lotus Publishing, who worked on the cover design and the layout and design for the book. And I asked him to include the paper jet because, and he's done that at the beginning chapters where there's a paper jet on each start at the start of each part, 1 to part 4, because I felt like during lockdown we weren't allowed to travel by plane, so we amused ourselves with paper jets and we stayed home. So that's the inference of the paper jet.
Okay, I just enjoyed, the idea of the lift off and the idea that, you chose to write in an uplifting way, which is important, of course. But at the same time, let's talk about, I mean, mental health during lockdown. We've come through it now, but there was just so much going on at the time in the space of isolation that we couldn't connect. And so being able to connect with ourselves, this is what I got from reading your collection, was uplifting in many ways. And when we bring back to how creativity and the arts saved us through the time of lockdown,
Yes.
then I think you've encapsulated this so beautifully. Speak to us about some of that, about mental health and dealing with lockdown and coming through it, lifting off from it. Tell us some of
Yes,
your
so I always knew I wanted the title to be Lockdown Liftoff, but the subtitle, Lost in Mayhem, Mirth and Recipe, I need to thank a fellow work colleague of mine at AFTA Durban, Leon Kutzer. We were chatting over the phone and we came up with that title together. And he included the word mirth because during the lockdown, as much as there was doom and gloom, there was also that sense of, as you mentioned, creativity taking the forefront and people unleashing their art and music and other forms of creative energies to deal with the lockdown. So that's where the subtitle comes from, and I think it's very fortunate for people to have, for artists to have that creative outlet and to deal with circumstances they might be facing, especially during the lockdown.
I think in general, also, we talk of writing as a form of healing therapy um, during and beyond the lockdown. And writing as a way of tapping into your processes, tapping into your inner self, and really trying to understand yourself. Um, what would you say would be the best way if anyone was writing a journal or a collection of poetry of their own, or a collection of essays, because you've got some reflective essays in your piece, in your collection as well? Where would you say anyone should begin? Because so many people want to, but are inhibited in many ways. I get asked this question as well. What would your advice be?
I think journaling is important, as the artist way talks about morning pages. So writing stream of consciousness every morning, that's one way. And I also attended Fiona Khan's journal healing workshop, and there she spoke about ways where setting a time each day to just journal, and how it helps in terms of dealing with stress or emotional circumstances. So I think the best way is just to put pen to paper and let it flow.
Share with us some of your favorite pieces from lockdown liftoffs. Speak to us. Maybe there's some poetry, reflective writing. You can take your time and just go through it and explain some of the inspiration behind the pieces. Your choice, how many you'd like to read. We'd love to have a taste of it.
Okay, thanks so much. So the first poem is called Ocean Echoes. Sound and silence, silence and sound. Somewhere in the liminal space between silence and sound, that's where humanity intersects. Good to see you. That greeting in sign language signals Ubuntu at play. Simunye, we are one. And like the waves that ebb and flow, we grow, reverberate, resonate, renew. Tumultuous tomorrows, sunshine or rain, the storm and sailor collide, navigating the blueprint to purposeful bliss. So this poem speaks about sound and silence, and it dealt with when I was lecturing sign language at DUT, and looking at deaf culture and what can be learned from the deaf world, and drawing on experiences where the deaf and hearing worlds can come together and collaborate. And then I've got another poem called Learning Curve Angle. Leaning in, working towards brightening smiles, muscling up in the path of service, sacrificing luxuries to ensure the greater good, sharing wonderscapes in work and play, learning, teaching, training, leading. The squirrel hastens to success. So that's a poem about work and serving humanity. And then I've got one, the last one I'll share quickly. It's called Magnanimous Measures, and it's about my calligraphy pursuits. Field of dreams, if you build it, they will come. Calligraphy venture set in motion on International Artist Day. Pen strokes swirling, the enchantment of writing personal names with bamboo and glass pens, measuring up margins, spacing, widths, rulers, pencils, erasers, steering the penmanship in elegant design, welcoming the day with a beautifully handcrafted message to inspire, delight, and spur the imagination. So that's when my calligraphy venture began on International Artist Day, 25th October 2020, and that's Picasso's birthday as well. And I had it at a friend's place in La Lucia, and she was kind enough to say that I could take photos and publicize it, and it grew from then on. And now I have workshops at coffee shops around Durban.
And what's your intake like when you have these coffee shop workshops? I mean, do you have a maximum limit that you can take, and are there certain age groups that you exclude, or how does it work?
I have the youngest participants I've had have been 6 years old, and I have them. Sometimes I have three in a workshop, sometimes 7 or 12. It depends on the bookings.
And do you find our community receptive to the art of calligraphy?
Yes, and what happened was once I started the English calligraphy, there was a demand for Arabic calligraphy. So I upskilled and I attended online Zoom workshops with my Ustad Fahim Rhoda Jackson in Cape Town. And I learned the Nask script and the Ruk'a script. So I still am on a retainer with his workshops every Wednesday evenings.
Well, I look forward to workshops when I'm in Durban, and I hope that I'll be able to join in some of your programs. I'm looking at part two, a second
That'll be
chance.
lovely. Yes.
Sky above, earth below, peace within. I think that's so beautiful. And you say, wherever life's adventures take you, meet it with chutzpah and a generous dollop of wonder, appreciating the miraculous in the mundane, unravels the treasured bounties that lie in wait. And you talk about your grade seven educator in this part, and you talk about Picasso, who says there are painters who transform the sun to a yellow spot, but there are others who, with the help of their art and intelligence, transform a yellow spot into sun. I think that's just so beautiful, how you've managed to, you know, take the ideologies you've read about and put them into your thinking. A second chance. Let's talk about second chances and what they mean for people.
Yes, I think life is always teaching and we're always learning. And sometimes there's a famous quote by Einstein which says, "In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity." And I draw great inspiration from that because there's been times in my life where, for instance, I faced immense challenges. Of not having a job, for instance, and making it work through the calligraphy workshops and working on my advertising and marketing and applying for jobs and uh, being persistent and never giving up. And I think that's what life teaches us, that there's always a silver lining, and after the storm, there's a bright rainbow. So we shouldn't give up.
And sometimes I think the lesson is, even if you feel the fear, even if you can taste the fear, you've got to do it anyway. Believe in yourself before anyone else can believe in you. And you've certainly done that with Lockdown Liftoff and so many of the other creative endeavors you've been involved in.
Yes,
And you have it in part three, you say creativity takes courage.
yes,
So it's
that's a
not
quote by Henry Matisse.
a quote, yeah. So it's not just an organic process.
Yes, I
What
think as
courage are we drawn upon to be creatives as we are?
I think sometimes it's very brave to come out with a collection of poetry or any art form or a creative pursuit because you always have critics So I know someone asked me, how did you just push on and get the poems published? And I said, I just sat every day in December last year and I just knew this is what I wanted to achieve. So, despite the odds, I made it happen. And I was fortunate, as I mentioned, that Hiren Ranchod from Blue Lotus Publishing came to the party and assisted with the layout and design. So that was very, it was a godsend actually, because it was my writing coming to fruition in terms of an anthology. And I mentioned to a friend who writes, and I said that sometimes it's nice to have all your work in a collection. Like, I'm so grateful for Lockdown Liftoff because it's got some of my calligraphy writings in it as well. And as you mentioned, the prose and the poems.
I think when these projects happen and you get the perfect collaborations between the designer, the writer, and it all comes together beautifully, then you know that it's a very special project, as this obviously is. So have no doubt that we're going to see more from you coming together in this way as well. And the thing is, when it comes to the courage to write, I mean, if I have to add a bit just to say, not everyone's going to like what you put out there. Not to say that we're
Yes.
deliberately rebellious in how we write, but not everyone is going to. It's not going to be tenable. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But the beauty of Lockdown Liftoff is it makes the perfect gift book, because of its uplifting kind of nature, but also because of the beauty in which it's presented with the calligraphy and the little drawings and the art and the faith with which it's been put together. So I would describe this as the perfect gift book for young and old. I don't even think it's age specific. I think that you get younger readers, teen readers. It would be a nice gift for somebody who's sitting in, say, in an old age home, and you wanted to read to them, or they wanted to just pick up. And it's also not the kind of book you have to read cover to cover. You could read a bit and pick up another chapter, and you read it again. So, what do you hope to accomplish, and can we see more writing from you in the future?
And I also just wanted to mention quickly that I've been collaborating with Rich Marv Ellis, the musician, legendary drummer, and we have put together the first 10 poems with musical accompaniment, and it's going to be available on a flash drive at the book launch, hopefully at Ike's in January. So I'm looking forward to that, and I also hope to have some of my artworks available as greeting cards at the launch.
Oh, that would be fantastic because the nice thing about the sort of, like I talked about collaborations earlier, is that you've got different forms of artistic expression from the same originator, which is you. And so your art, the musical sort of compilations of your poetry, and the anthology will be such an amazing thing to see all together at the same time. I look forward to that. I certainly hope I can make it to one of your, especially your first launch. And yes, anything in the future? What's waiting for us down the line um, from your writing?
I'm planning to come out with a short story and poetry collection in one book, and also a novella based at a high school, so sort of like a high school musical sort of novella.
Okay, so there's
To something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your five-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042 203 1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
It's a new beginning. It's a new era. Salam Media. Humanitarian journalism.
And we're back speaking to Sana-Bella Ebrahim about her latest collection, Lockdown Liftoff, Masked in Mayhem, Mirth, and Misery. Sana, it was such a pleasure getting this opportunity to chat to you, especially about this new collection. I'm so excited about your future launches and future writing. And I'm going to look forward to seeing when your launches begin in the new year. Where can people get hold of this copy right now? Can we get signed copies directly to you and
At the moment, I haven't had them in bookstores, but they will be shortly. And all details are available on my Instagram page at ArtScribes Global. And there's a Facebook page as well, ArtScribes Global.
Okay, so we can follow Art Scribes Global for future launches, media events, and obviously
Yes,
order copies for the book as well.
yes,
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for the time that you've given us this evening. Reading from the book, I can think of it as a soft launch in my own way. So you saw it at Bookbytes first, and I hope the readers are going to get copies of the book, and especially that with Christmas coming up and the holidays, it'll be a great end of year present for students who've done well at school. Sana, thank you
yes.
once again for being with us on Bookbytes. Jazakallah khair, and we wish you everything of the best.
Jazakallah so much.
And so there you have it. We had Sana Ibrahim with Lockdown Liftoff. Please do get yourself a copy of this pretty cute, very well written little book of poetry and reflections. And look out for media events in the new year. And that's it from us on Book Bites and the Salam Media team. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.